So you're thinking about moving to Central Florida and the greater Orlando area? Well, don't do it. Just kidding. Unless you can handle these 6 things, these are definitely factors to take into consideration prior to making the move down here to Central Florida. In all honesty, there are some factors that I want to address with you that I'm sure you are likely considering and thinking about, including things like alligators and hurricanes and sinkholes and insects and all of the things. So stick around because we're going to get into it right now. Hi, my name is Stephanie, and if this is your first time to the channel, be sure to click subscribe and tap the bell for notifications so you can stay in tune on everything there is to know about living here in Central Florida. My team and I get calls, texts, emails every day from people just like you looking to make the move, and we absolutely love it. My family and I made the move down a few years back, and we absolutely love it. So we are so excited to share with you everything you need to know and take into consideration prior to making your move down here to Central Florida. So prior to making the move down here to Central Florida, I did heavily weigh the pros and the cons. We moved down from just outside of Philadelphia, and to be honest, I didn't want to move. My husband wanted to move, my parents really wanted to move, and I was very hesitant. All of our family was up north. I was born and raised up north, and we love to visit Florida. We would actually hop on a plane and just go for the weekend about once a month to escape the cold, but I really didn't want to move. I told my family I would try it for a year, and if I didn't like it, we were going back. So needless to say, I absolutely love it, and I hope that will be the case for you too when you do finally decide to make your move. But in the meantime, there are several factors I do want to address because I'm sure they're on your mind as they were for me. Now, if you are looking for a pros and cons video, I did record a video specifically for that in Central Florida. I'll link it in the comments below and above in the little eye up there that you can tap on. But in the meantime, this video is focusing on several factors that I get asked about all of the time, including alligators and insects and hurricanes and weather and everything that you likely want to know, especially if you're not from Central Florida or Florida in general. Okay, so number one, the first thing I will touch on is the weather. People are often moving down because of the weather. You're escaping the dreary, gray, cold days that lie up north or in the Midwest. And many people, though, are hesitant and curious about hurricanes and humidity and how hot does it really get. And so I do want to address that. So you are moving to a tropical location. So you are going to have humidity, of course. Not so great on the hair, I will admit, ladies, but aside from that, and when you finally become accustomed to it and how to manage it and deal with the humidity in general, it's not terrible. So you have air conditioning, you have pools, right? It's everything that you would normally do, especially if you're in a northern cold state. It's sort of the opposite here. You just prepare differently. Instead of snow days, we have hurricane days. So it's just a different reality, and it's definitely something to take into consideration. So when we moved down, we've experienced about 3 hurricanes now. Hurricane Ian was the largest, and fortunately, being that we were inland just north of Orlando, we didn't have much flooding or any damage really. We really were fortunate. Many of these homes down here are built to withstand high winds, and you have wind mitigation testing and things like that with the inspections prior to purchases. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. But hurricanes can be intense, especially if you're not used to them. So down here, if you are a Floridian or born and raised, or you have been down here for a long time, you sort of see the difference. There are people who were like us and sort of preparing and panicking and stocking up with sandbags. And then you have the Floridians who've withstood many hurricanes are just kind of like, yeah, we're good. So not to make light of the situation, it's definitely something you want to be prepared for. It's just a different mindset for people who are born and raised here versus people who are relocating and aren't familiar with these things. So We lasted about 3 days throughout preparing, and post Hurricane Ian, my daughter was off school for 3 days and we had not lost power. The main thing that we lost was internet, which can be difficult with little ones who want to stream. But aside from that, the reality is we were well prepared. We really just had a different experience. There were crane birds just meandering out back in the high winds, and it was just another day for them. So down here, we don't have obviously the snow and the gray, dreary skies that we have up north, but we do have the hurricanes occasionally. So that's definitely something to take into consideration. Now, with that said, if you are looking to purchase a home down here, you want to check the flood zones. If you are not in flood zone X, you will be required to have flood insurance. So it's definitely something you want to consider when you are looking to purchase a home here in Central Florida. Now, about June through September, it gets very hot, very humid, and it does often lead to a rainstorm almost every single day, mid-afternoon. And it's just something I enjoy to, watch the rainstorms. It's something I've always enjoyed even as a kid. But you do want to be cautious. The lightning down here is no joke. It can get very intense and it can sort of creep in very quickly. So just something to consider, that you will have rain showers almost every day throughout the summer. You will have high humidity. Outside of that though, once you get into about October through March, you are getting some really nice weather and even some chilly weeks in January, February. I know I originally got rid of a lot of our winter clothes, and I ended up having to buy some winter hats and gloves for my children down here last year. So it isn't that you won't have chilly days. There are some nights, it gets into the 40s or below. We have, frost come in sometimes. We have to cover the plants here in Central Florida, but it is just something to consider. Outside of that, my favorite months up north were always in the fall season, October, September, and I sort of have that weather all through winter down here, which I absolutely love. So that's definitely a great perk here in Central Florida. Now, your body will adjust, I will say. I was pregnant my second summer here, and I didn't think I was gonna make it, you guys. It was no joke. But after that summer, I feel like I handle the heat pretty well, and the humidity even. So if that's you, if you are not a hot weather person, you're probably not gonna like the summers here. But if you are not a cold weather person like me, I literally hated walking outside and the wind being so cold it burned my face. It just wasn't my type of atmosphere, and I think that's why I love Central Florida so much, because you do have enough of a flex in weather that it's not just hot and humid all year round. It really does get nice, but your body will adjust to that, I will say. So second thing I'll touch on is the wildlife, because I know prior to moving down, I always would look for alligators down here, and when we would visit, I would rarely see them, but I knew they were here. So now that we've been living here for several years, obviously we encounter alligators. I have yet to see one in my community. Not to say they're not there. I'm sure if there's a body of water, there is an alligator here, but they tend to be in locations that you can sort of prepare for. So if you know there is a lake nearby, or a body of water even, assume there's an alligator. Assume there are snakes present. So if you go in with that mindset, it's not as shocking, or I don't know, you're still kind of shocked if you see a snake, but even them, I've seen maybe a handful out in the wild. Now we are in a built community, highly developed, so they aren't around as much as maybe they would be if we were in a more rural setting. However, again, they are there. I am just now going into about 3.5 years of living here, deciding that I think I want to try to go into the natural springs, because they look so beautiful and there's so much to offer, and I really want to experience them. But I've been so nervous to go into a fresh body of water knowing that there could potentially be alligators here. Now, local Floridians born and raised here are they know how to deal with them. They're not really fazed by it. They say alligators don't really approach you, and maybe, but coming from up north where we don't have alligators, that is definitely something I'm very hesitant about. I don't think I would just go swimming in a body of water like a lake ever, I don't think, down here, just because I'm not used to it and I'm very nervous if I don't see it. At least the springs, they look clear. You can kind of see what's around you. And know your doom if it's coming, I guess. I don't know, but that is something to consider. They are here. Just be aware, be cautious, be smart, especially with animals or little ones as you're approaching waterways. But there have been incidents that you hear about on the news where alligators are, at someone's front door. So check your Ring camera. But in all honesty, they haven't been a nuisance to us being down here in the last 3.5 years. Snakes, they are present. I've seen a handful here in our community. Outside of that, I've seen a handful maybe outside of the community. Snakes are up north too though, so it's just being aware, knowing, not to approach them and just being cautious. So up north, of course, you have insects, you have the spiders and all of the bugs, but down here, they're different. So we have investment properties. A lot of properties that we purchase tend to need a lot of tender loving care. One property we have has these huge wolf spiders and they are fast. I do not like spiders whatsoever. And I will say that is something that I'm still getting used to. Now, if you're getting treatments in your own home, with all of the exterminating treatments that you need, I don't really see those types of spiders and things here in my home, but they're here in Florida and they're present, and that's just something that you either have to actively prepare for or be proactive in preventing. So something to consider. We also have tons of lizards around. I really don't mind them. They eat the mosquitoes and the spiders and the insects, so I kind of like having them around. I've had one get into my house in the last 3.5 years, and it wasn't, hard to just kind of shoo them right back out. So I do like having them. The other thing we have down here that we didn't have up north, and you may not be familiar with, are fire ants. And when we first moved here, my daughter stepped off of the sidewalk right into a mound, and immediately these fire ants were biting up her foot and her leg, and it was just awful. I've been bitten by them. It burns a little bit, but it's something to be cautious of because, ants are ants up north, but down here you have to really watch for the fire ants because they do bite. Also, there are bears and deer and cougars and bobcats and things that you wouldn't really always think of when you think of Florida. You immediately think of snakes and alligators, but there are many areas that have bears just roaming around in the evening, just like you were, in the Poconos up north. So something to also keep in mind. We're not escaping any of those creatures. Okay, number 3 is cost of living. So prior to 2020, the cost of living down here in Central Florida was really reasonable. And I think a lot of people retired here, moved here because, especially from up north, because they were going to get a great value. And after 2020, it's been a booming housing market. Obviously, many people are relocating down here to Central Florida and just Florida in general, but it has affected the cost of living. Everything across the country, of course, has gone up, but you're not getting that top value that you once did. So taking that into consideration, Orlando area, Central Florida is still very comparable to many cities throughout the United States. It's much lower than California, like San Francisco, New York. You're pretty comparable to Philadelphia area, but you may be paying more than what you're used to if you are an existing Floridian or maybe from the Midwest, where your cost of living is a little bit cheaper. So homeowners insurance has been on the rise here. Overall cost of groceries and things have been on the rise. It comes with, a lot of people moving into the area and the demand. So of course it's going to impact that. I always try to support local farmers, local businesses, mom and pop shops, people who have been born and raised in Florida, we want to support them in any way that we can because we are moving into their territory. So it's something to be very considerate about, but just be educated in knowing that the cost that you once had here is not what it used to be. So it's very comparable, like I said, to different areas. You can actually type in your city in comparison to Orlando on salary.com and get a really great side-by-side comparison to know what you're coming into. Now, with that said, down here we do have no state income tax. You do have homestead tax exemptions. You do have lower healthcare. You have a lot of benefits that do save you money long-term. So that is something to continue to consider. Okay, number 4 is the traffic. So we're from the Northeast. There's always traffic surrounding major cities, of course, but I-4 is no joke. And it has helped significantly that they've opened the expressway. I always drive it for $3.50. You bypass so much traffic. There's a lot less chance of an accident because there's fewer cars traveling on that road. But if you travel I-4 in general, you are going to be sitting in lots of traffic, especially approaching Orlando. Also, the traffic lights here, I wasn't prepared for this, but the traffic lights take forever. I don't understand it, but they take forever. They literally can take up to 3 to 5 minutes, which can make my daughter late for school sometimes just because the light, we didn't catch it on the green light. So something to consider. It's definitely different down here, at least from up north. There is a blend of people from all over the world. So when you have all of these transplants coming into Florida, the driving can be, I'll just leave it at that. The driving can be questionable. There's always accidents. We are always, just watching before we go across the crosswalk. People don't stop at the red lights. These are just things to be very aware of and cautious of when you make the move down here. And lastly, sinkholes are something that I was nervous about. You can actually Google, there's maps where you can see the location of sinkholes and which areas are more prevalent than others, and that definitely factored in. However, you do live in Florida, there will be possibilities of sinkholes. I certainly feel safe where we are, but that's something to consider 100%. So that pretty much sums up. Take into consideration, and again, whether you are looking to make the move in the next few days or the next few months, please feel free to reach out. My contact information is in the description below, and I would love to support you on your home search journey here in Central Florida. As always, I hope you found value in this, and don't forget to click subscribe and tap the bell for notifications so you can stay in tune on everything there is to know about living here in Central Florida. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.